Mark Turner with Premier Food Service Group. Salvajor has long been one of my favorite lines to rep. It's a great product with great people, and in 25 years, I haven't had to apologize once. So to go over some of the basics, Salvajor is water cooled. Everybody else in the industry is air cooled. If you've got anything other than an old Porsche 911, that engine is water cooled. Water dissipates heat much better than air does. So the water that flushes stuff down the drain is also what cools the motor, which means as long as water's flowing, this doesn't ever burn out. Ironically, what you don't want to have put in it is plastic forks, plastic knives, saran wrap, things that when it cools down will solidify inside of the motor and block it when you try to turn it back on. So if you drop a fork or a knife or metal in there, it may jam it, but you just fish that out. And then there's a reset switch on the bottom that's a black arrow pointing down. That's probably 75% of the service call. So if people know to hit that reset switch after a jam, you're good to go. This is a trough veyor. These can have a collector on the bottom, which I'll get to in a minute, or a typical disposer on it. And what these do is it recirculates water down a trough. You'll notice this trough is a good bit wider than a typical 3 or 4 inch trough that a lot of consultants will design. If you're doing a trough veyor, correct my numbers on this if I'm wrong, but I believe this gets 2 new gallons of water per minute with a throughput of 30 gallons per water. So you've got a lot of water coming through, but very little fresh water being used. Ideally, what you want to do as well is take a stack of plates or a stack of trays, set them down in the flow of water, and that will kind of agitate and do a lot of the pre-rinsing for you. Then you use 2 hands and scrap out going through the water plume here. So you've got 2 hands to rack dishes with, not 1 hand on a pre-rinse spraying over your rack. I'm a fan, if I understand you need to have a pre-rinse. I like to make it slightly inconvenient so that they can go down and use the pre-rinse when they've got to wash out a big pot. But when they're doing their plate scrapping, they use 2 hands instead of having 1 hand on the pre-rinse. This will double your scrapping speed easily by being able to use 2 hands. A lot of people get hung up on how fast a dish machine is, and it can't keep up with who's loading it. So I don't want to hear about how fast the dish machine is if you put a rack in and then go stand on the other side and wait for it to come down. If you want to speed up your dish machine, make it full. This will speed things up. All right. So instead of a disposer, this is a Salvajor collector. You can use these if you want composting. You can use it in areas where you can't have a disposer because of the plumbing regulations, or you can have it in a place where you just want to have less solid mass going down into your trash. So it's not quite like a pulper. You don't have to feed paper and cardboard in it. It doesn't produce a pulp. What it does is any soluble foods like breads that will dissolve in water go down the perforated basket. Any solid things like proteins, leafy greens, bones, those all stay behind. So you have a huge reduction in the mass and the weight of your trash in this basket. So, if you're composting, you've got a bunch of good material in that, chuck that in your compost and you're good to go. Functionally, all it is, if you look down in there, is a drain pipe. So at the end of the day, you pull that drain pipe up, drains out, you're done and good to go. So put the scrap basin back in. There's your silverware saver. You drop that back in. And then when you turn it on, the plume starts going. So same idea with the other ones. This one is a pot pan scrap collector. So it's big enough to put a sheet pan in. Or, like with the other one, you take a stack of dishes, let them roll in there, and then your dish guy is racking with 2 hands, not 1 hand on a pre-rinse nozzle. This also recirculates the water. I'll have the numbers wrong on this, but a couple of fresh gallons of water, a lot of recirculation, so you get a lot of volume without using all your fresh water coming through. Behind you is the trough veyor system with the collector at the end of it. So it shows you can have the recirculation going into the trough collector set up as well. A lot of people get intimidated by disposers, and they shouldn't, because it's one of the simplest things to spec in the industry. All you got to do is understand the model numbers. So with Salvajor, the base unit is just a something 100. So 300 is a 3 horsepower. So pretty simple and straightforward on the base unit. So a Salvajor model number will be a 300. The next letters after that 300 will either be a CA for a cone adapter, which is what you have in a prep sink, or an SA for a sink adapter, which is 90% of the orders that goes in a sink basin. The third number is the control panel, and its manual reverse start stop is an MRSS. ARSS is automatic reverse start stop. So even the control panel model numbers are pretty easy to figure out, and they are named to explain what they are. So horsepower, cone or sink, probably a sink, and then what kind of control panel do you want on it? Any control panel can run any disposer, often even other brands, because the control panel only sends a signal to the disposer. If you have a different manufacturer of disposer and it dies, Salvajor gives you a free adapter bracket to mount ours to the mounting holes of whatever other brand. So you can still use their control panel, you can use their mounting, just put one of these on instead, and you've got the best disposer on the market.